Attention listeners, Aftersight's annual hike is coming up on July 27th.
It was a really good experience for me.
Visit aftersight.org/hike and become an audio trekker today.
That hike today gave me so much courage.
You didn't think you could do it, did you?
It's a good start. A little bit left.
You didn't think you could reach the summit.
You gotta keep moving. Let's keep moving. Let's go.
You didn't think you could be an Olympian.
Drive. Come on now. There you go. Use your arms.
You never thought you could experience the great outdoors. You didn't think you could experience sports ever again.
Keep going.
Today is a new day.
Don't quit on me. Keep going.
Your world is now and forever changed because you did it. You are doing it, and you will do the things you love again.
You're very bad. You're very bad.
If you want to play it, run it, hunt it, swim it, hike it, you've come to the right place. Welcome to Game Changers. It's time to change the game. What's good, everybody? Jonathan Price here with my co-host Ethan Johnson. Man, it is such a great day to be alive and be here. And unfortunately, my co-host Ethan is not with me this week, but that's okay. He's going to be here next week, though. So I'm just going to have to hold down the fort. I'm just going to have to keep it real. We're going to go fast. We're going to go live. And we have an amazing guest, Dominick Petrillo, who is a sports writer for The Athletic and quite a few other things. But before we get into that, I have to make some announcements. We're going to be having a hike that's actually coming up in 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks exactly, on July 27th. Actually, it'll be a week by the time this airs. It's going to be awesome. Myers Gulch. We're just a hike, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 hikers. It'll be awesome. Blind hikers are going to be going up. We're going to provide food and all the amazing things. It'll be so much fun. Bring your guide dogs. We will have guides available for you, so that'll be awesome. And it'll be just a great time of fellowship and fun and food and hiking. And there's also a nature bathing, which I've never done nature bathing. When I first heard of it, I was like, I don't want to take a bath out in the sunshine where everybody can see me. But that is going to be awesome. Nature bathing is just a way to reconnect with nature and get grounded and kind of experience the great outdoors in a very unique way. So we're going to be excited to have you guys on. Okay, I'm done chatting because I have somebody here who has just been really, really cool to get to know. Dominick Petrillo, who is a blind sports writer, and not because it's cool because he's blind and a sports writer, just he's a sports writer in and of itself is epically awesome. He's worked with Rotoballer, Expand the Box Score, Football Guys, worked with the Philadelphia Eagles, and is right now currently working as a contributor for The Atlantic. Dominick, my friend, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm actually working for the Athletic, not The Atlantic. I've actually applied for the Atlantic.
Oh, Athletic. I meant.
Yeah.
I was reading my notes. I meant to say The Athletic, but yeah, that's awesome. Well, very cool. So you are in Philadelphia. The weather has been extremely hot there as well, but you guys have a lot more humidity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's supposed to be 97 here today with the real feel of about 105. Tomorrow it's supposed to be the hottest day of the year. Here it's supposed to be 99 degrees and the real feel about 110.
Jesus, Lou. Do you guys normally get temperatures that hot?
Not in recent years. I mean, we get a lot of temperatures in the 90s, but not this many days in a row usually. This is, I think, the second or third heat wave we've had, which is, I don't know if it's the same all over, but here it's at least 3 days in a row of over 90 degrees. Yeah. So this will be at least the third one that we've had since the beginning of June.
I know, that's insane. I know last weekend in Colorado, we had 3 or 4 days right in a row of over 100 degrees, but it hits a little bit differently because it's very dry and we're about a mile closer to the sun than people on the East Coast. So you burn a little bit easier. We look a little bit more crispy than people out in Philly do. But anyway, you're in Philadelphia now, and you grew up in Philadelphia, right?
Yeah, grew up in the suburbs of Philly and have lived around here my entire life.
So you got to witness some amazing sports folklore and legend growing up in Philadelphia. What was that like, and what are some stories, or what is the most memorable story that you have?
Well, the two things that I remember the most from growing up, I was born in 1980, so I don't really remember the 1980 World Series or anything.
Okay.
My first main memory is watching Mike Schmidt hit his 500th home run against the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah. Nice.
My other one was coming home from my friend's house and turning on the TV, and obviously it was a tube TV, so back in the day, and asking my grandparents why the TV was messed up, and they said, that's not messed up, that's the game, and it was the Fog Bowl for the Eagles against the Bears, and you couldn't even see anything on the TV screen.
Yep. Yeah, Is that the game that they also cut away from because they couldn't see anything, or was that a different game? There was a game that they just cut the broadcast. That the same game?
That may have been the game. I know this is a playoff game, so I don't know if they would really cut away for it, but the only place you could see on any part of the field was like the 220-yard lines or whatever. Even the referees couldn't see anything. So it was weird that they were even playing in it.
That's so crazy. I can't imagine playing in it. I've played a lot of football games, but trying to play in something like that would have been absolutely nuts. Any other fun, crazy stories? I mean, all with the Philadelphia Eagles stuff, and I mean, you're not quite old enough for the Rocky, stuff. Any other sports things that happen?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of great stories. Like I remember, I want to say it was 2021, maybe 2000. It might have been a little bit early, maybe 2019, and it was actually against the Detroit Lions where they came to Philadelphia. And once the game starts, you're not allowed to plow a field or shovel a field, other than if you're the New England Patriots. So what they did was it was like a blizzard. They were running the ball, and it was up to by the end of the game, it was up to the players' knees. It was like between 8 and 10 inches of snow on the field. And then the other one that I remember vividly, it was when actually I could still see, was I was actually it was the only sports event going anywhere in the world that night. It was the Eagles, or not the Eagles, the Phillies game, and it was Cliff Lee was pitching, and they were playing against the Mets, and it was the night Osama bin Laden was killed, and everybody was in the stadium knew before the announcers did.
Oh, I just got chills. That's crazy. I didn't realize that until you just said that. That's pretty amazing. Well, I want to transition a little bit into how you became a sports writer, because your sports career has been pretty amazing. We're going to get into your blindness journey a little bit later, but how did you get into sports writing?
Well, after I went blind, I decided I couldn't just, sit there and do nothing, because unfortunately there are a lot of people in the blind community that once they go blind, they just feel like they're useless or helpless, and they don't do anything and just sit there and wither away for the rest of their lives. And I knew I wasn't going to do that. And I always loved sports, and I always loved writing. So I figured that was my way of getting my story out there about how I went blind and how I can use my story to help others. I figured sports has an intersection with millions of people and even, billions around the world. So I decided I wanted to get into writing. So I ended up reaching out to a couple of people in the fantasy football world that I heard on a podcast, and they got me connected with a couple other people, and started out at a bunch of very small websites that don't even exist anymore, writing for free, and then got a couple breaks with Rotoballer, and then obviously with The Athletic and USA Today and the Philadelphia Eagles. And I've just trying to work up and trying to find something full time. But right now I'm continually doing some freelance work.
That's epic, man. I'm so excited for the stuff that you do. Real quick, tell us a little bit about your journey into blindness and what was the cause of it. And then maybe go into how you're being successful as a blind sports writer. Me going blind, it happened 12 years ago. Growing up, I always had more than 20/20 vision. I always had, better than 20/20 vision. And the last job I actually had was driving rental cars for a rental car agency and renting cars to people. And then in about February 2012, I was already using, glasses because my eyesight was going a little bit from diabetes. And I could tell it was getting worse and worse. And then by June, I ended up having to use a magnifying glass to be able to use the computer at work. So that's what I was doing. And then my sister ended up having to drive me to work and back and forth to work. I'd wait until she got off of work at 6, and then she'd come pick me up, and she'd take me to work in the morning before she went to work. And I would they would allow me to rent the cars without having to drive them. So that's what I was doing, for a while.
And then it just got to the point where on November 12th, 2012, or November 19th, 2012, excuse me, is the day I consider that I went blind. It was a Monday. I went into work that day, and even with the magnifying glass, I just couldn't see the screen anymore. So I called my sister and said, hey, you got to come pick me up. I can't see anymore. And then by December of that year, I had my first eye surgery, and then I had more in January of 2013. And, I was completely blind by January came, but I consider November 19th the day I went blind because that was the last day I was able to actually hold a job.
Jeez. That's incredible. So is the official diagnosis diabetic retinopathy?
Yep, diabetic retinopathy. Okay. Yep, and I went to the eye doctor, and he said, well, you have detached retinas. I said, oh, which eye? He said, both of them.
Holy smokes. So there's no perceived vision at all?
Nope, not at all.
Wow, you're one of the few. That's pretty incredible. What are some of the challenges you face kind of on a daily basis, if there are any, of being a blind writer, and how do you overcome some of those?
The biggest challenges I face is, formatting, because I'm still not the best with JAWS. I know the basics of JAWS, but I'm not an expert in any means at it. So I do what I can, but obviously formatting sometimes is difficult, but my editors know that, and they completely understand, and they just say, do the work that you can do. You can do the research, I can do the articles and stuff. It's just the formatting sometimes is a little off, so they're willing to work with me and do that. And then obviously I can't find pictures to put in my articles, so they do that for me.
Sure.
Other than that, the biggest thing I find is that there are a lot of websites out there, even ones for sports people, that are not accessible, and a lot of them, and some of them are really working to become accessible. Like True Media is working with me to try and become accessible. Other sites have worked with me and worked with a lot of others to become accessible. Yahoo Sports is extremely accessible, especially their fantasy platform is 100% accessible, where other ones,
nice,
like Sleeper, won't even become accessible. And when you try and talk to them about it, they've blocked a number of my friends that have asked about accessibility and stuff, so that they just don't want to hear about it. PFF, Pro Fantasy Focus, is not accessible. They're not, jerks about it or anything. They haven't become accessible, and I don't know when they're going to be. So there are those out there that really want to become accessible. Like I said, like True Media, Yahoo, really work with a lot in the blind community. One of my good friends actually now works for Yahoo Fantasy and making accessibility thing. They have an entire accessibility division, so they really work on it, where other ones just, put it off and don't care. So you just have to find the ones that you can really work with. Yeah,
it's interesting when you're talking about the accessibility when it comes to specific websites and being a writer, because a lot of the sites, like I think of ESPN, which is not the most accessible website on the planet. It's getting there. There's some good things about it, but for people who want to engage in sports and collect that, just any information really about sports, accessibility can be a huge barrier to that. So thanks for trying to bridge that gap. We appreciate it in the community. When you started off writing in sports, did you focus on a specific area? Because aren't you focusing now on real like fantasy football, or what are you focusing on now?
When I first started, yes, it was all fantasy football that I focused on, because I figured that would be the easiest thing for me to focus on to begin with. And then I wanted to branch out from there. I always knew I was going to just concentrate on football because, as you said, especially with accessibility, there's certain things like, because the NFL is like the biggest sport in America right now, and pretty much in the world. So they have a lot of accessibility. Like, it's funny, the NFL.com website is extremely accessible. But the NFL fantasy is 100% non-accessible. They just don't care about accessibility in the fantasy, only on their website, so they can say that they're accessible there. Right. Same with ESPN. I mean, their website is pretty accessible. Their fantasy is semi-accessible, but for the draft, it's accessible. But for in-season things, it's not accessible. I've actually, Matthew Berry's a friend of mine. I've actually reached out to him a number of times, and he's reached out to the technical department there, and they say, oh, yeah, we're going to work on it, and then they never do. So they know about it. They just don't care. Unfortunately, it's just things you have to deal with. So I've focused on fantasy football from the start. And then obviously with the Philadelphia Eagles, I was doing regular football. I was doing their game previews, their season opponent previews for them. Nice. And I was doing articles about their cheerleaders and different. The year I spent with them, I did articles on different groups of the cheerleaders that went over to Africa to do things over there.
That's cool.
And just different things that they've done, like out to the Pro Bowl and things like that. So I did some articles about the cheerleaders there. And then for USA Today, I did their sportsbookwire.com. So I did basically game previews of NFL football games, betting lines, college football games, and college basketball games, mostly a couple of hockey and baseball, but mostly those three sports, and just did different game previews of those games, what the lines were, and then I had to pick a score prediction, an over-under prediction, a line prediction, and things like that, just for people to, to give people ideas of what to bet on or what looks good and everything based on the teams that were playing.
That's super cool, man. That's a lot of different things to be kind of engaged in. And are you still engaged in kind of all of those, or is one taken over more than another?
Yeah, right now I mostly do the fantasy football for The Athletic. That's like the only work that I get right now. And then I just did, starting a couple months ago, pick up some work from the Sports Illustrated fan site for Auburn Tigers University. Cool. So not necessarily just for football, but for all the teams in Auburn, and then also for a little bit doing the Florida Gators, which I've only done one article about that because the gentleman hired me for the Auburn, for Florida, for the Atlanta Braves and the Atlanta Falcons, but he wants me to focus on the Auburn Tigers. So that's pretty much what I've been focusing on.
Well, that's super cool. Well, we're going to switch to some more fun, exciting topics. And I want to discuss with you the actual current state of fantasy football. And because we actually have a lot of listeners who enjoy fantasy football. So can you explain a little bit about the different types of leagues? I know you have PPR leagues. You have a ton of leagues. Explain some of the differences, if you will.
Yeah, any of the types of leagues can be different. So it's weird to explain, but you can have Devy leagues, you can have guillotine leagues, you can have vampire leagues, you have redraft leagues, and inside all of those types of leagues, you have whether it be PPR, half PPR, tight end premium. But yeah, PPR is obviously a point per reception. So for every pass a guy catches, you get a point. Then there's half PPR, you get a half a point. Tight end premium, where like everybody gets 1 point, but tight ends will get 1.5 points or 2 points. Then there's different things like that. There's 2 QB leagues where you have to start 2 quarterbacks. There's super flex where you can start 2 quarterbacks, but you don't have to. But those are all different game types. But then there's the redraft where you pick a new team every year.
Oh man, yep.
There's
the legacy leagues.
Yeah, there's
the legacy. Oh my gosh, those legacy leagues are awesome.
Yeah, that's the most common league. That's pretty much what everybody started with. Then there's dynasty leagues, which you pick a team at the beginning, and then every year you pick from a pool of rookies. But to put those rookies on your team, you have to drop some of your veterans, but then you keep them going forward. You going forward. And even those have some different, like where if you draft Justin Jefferson as a rookie and you have him for 3 years, that's the most you're allowed to have, and then you have to drop him. So there's certain leagues that have different rules like that as well. Then there's the developmental league, which is the same as a dynasty league, except you also have to pick high school players and college players and hope that they make it to the league. There's guillotine leagues where the lowest point total each week gets eliminated from the league. Eliminated.
Oh, I love those. Those are fun.
Yeah, then there's vampire leagues, which I don't know. You and I didn't talk about, so I don't know if you know what they are or not. They're pretty cool, and they're usually dynasty leagues as well. Not always, but usually dynasty leagues. And what it is everybody has their team at the beginning of the year, and then say I play you in week 1 and I beat you. I get to take one of your players. So any player I want, I get to add to my team, and then I have to drop a player from my team. So if you have Patrick Mahomes, but I beat you, then I get to take Patrick Mahomes, and then I can drop whoever I want to off of my team, and then you have to go pick up a new quarterback off the waiver wire to finish out your season or whatever. So then I may have Josh Allen, but now I have Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, or if you have Christian McCaffrey, I'm allowed to take Christian McCaffrey off your team, and then if I beat the next person, and then so each week the winner from that game gets to choose a player off the loser's team.
That's bonkers. I've never heard of that. That's a lot of fun. That sounds like that'd be really fun, and really, boy, you better not have some really close friends that you're playing that with, because you could get in some major trouble. Holy smokes. So, okay, so we're going to do a little bit of fantasy kind of freak out. You've got your fantasy scene. Let's just go with a basic like PPR league and, legacy type style league. If somebody's wanting to get into fantasy football for the first time, how are you building your team? What are you starting with? Or what's the typical thing to start with if people want to get into fantasy football?
Maybe I shouldn't advertise, but I would start with Yahoo because they have especially as a blind person, I would start with Yahoo because they are 100% accessible and they are free leagues. So you don't have to pay. There's different websites like My Fantasy League, which I love for Dynasty, but it's like $70 a year for a league that you have to pay and everything. So Yahoo is all free. So I would start with them, and then everybody loves to grab quarterbacks up front. And I did the same thing when I started. Like my first pick, I remember making it like 101 was Peyton Manning.
Wow.
So it's but now there's a big thing, especially with JJ Zacharyson, who the late round QB. Great. He's a great guy and everything. He started a thing where you want to pick your quarterback late because you pretty much get the same out of the top 10 or 12 or 15 quarterbacks, and it doesn't make as huge a difference. So the best thing to do is to pick best skill players first. If it's if it's a PPR, you may want to pick a wide receiver or like possibly like Christian McCaffrey, somebody who's going to have as many receptions as a wide receiver, but also have the rushing ability. So he's usually a top pick. If it is a 2 quarterback league or super flex league, then yes, you are going to take quarterbacks early because you need 2 of them that are very good. So you're probably going to need 3 quarterbacks. So all the quarterbacks are going to be taken. But for the most part, if it's just a standard 1 quarterback league with maybe 2 flex, I would certainly make sure you get your running backs and wide receivers early, and then wait on your quarterback until the 6th or 7th round, maybe even later, depending on who you like. So find a quarterback that goes late in drafts that you think is really going to have a great breakout year and is going to overshoot where their draft slot is.
Now, one thing that I have done in some of my leagues, and it's either a really big reward or a really big crash and burn, is that I'll get a quarterback and either a tight end, a wide receiver, or a running back from that same team so that I'm doubling up on points. Sometimes that's a really bad way to go, but other times it really pays off. It's awesome. Are there any other strategies that you would recommend?
Yeah, that is definitely good. Like doing a stack. I know that's definitely big in DFS as well, the daily fantasy. But stacks can definitely help you, and it is better to have a stack. Like if you have, say, Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown, it's better to have that stack than be like you're up by 5 points going into Monday night, and you have AJ Brown and they have Jalen Hurts,
right?
And then
you're
trying to figure out, AJ Brown somehow Jalen Hurts gets hurt, but AJ Brown still gets 3 touchdowns from the backup quarterback, and it is definitely weird. Like I remember before I got into my a league with my former boss from the car rental place, he had a league in 2007 where the guy was a huge Patriots fan, and obviously that was the year they went 16-0 and broke all the records and everything. So he took all Patriots players. He took every Patriots wide receiver, Tom Brady, the running backs, the defense, and he went undefeated except for their bye week. Obviously he knew he wasn't going to drop anybody, so he just lost the bye week, and then went undefeated at all the rest of the games and ended up winning the league with only Patriots players. But that's incredible. Obviously going to be extremely rare.
Right. That's bonkers. That's really funny. So as you've gone through all this fantasy stuff, you've seen a lot of amazing players. Give us your top, I'm just going to say 3 players that you would pick up in any one of your leagues for this upcoming year.
For this upcoming, it's funny, I'm actually working on an article right now for The Athletic for my guys of players that I want this year. They may not necessarily be the best players, but these are the guys that I really want because I think they're going to have good years. One of them is Kyler Murray. I'm never been a huge Kyler Murray fan at all. Okay. I just think he was overrated. But I do think this year with Marvin Harrison being there, I think that it's really going to make Arizona's offense hum. So I do really like Kyler Murray this year. Everybody's down on him, so he's not getting drafted highly either. Right. So I think that's really helpful. He's not like a top 5 quarterback like he used to be. Now he's in like the 10 to 12 range. So if I can get him there, I do think he has the chance to be a top 5, maybe even possibly a top 3 quarterback. So I really like Kyler Murray this year. Another one I like is at running back is I love Jamar Gibbs this year from Detroit Lions.
Detroit Lions.
Yeah. Yeah, a great rookie year last year. He had over 900 yards rushing. He had over 300 yards receiving. He had over 50
crazy fast.
Yeah, 50 receptions. 180 rushes. He had 8 touchdowns or 10 rushing touchdowns, two receiving touchdowns. I just think he's in for a monster year this year. I think that being there the second year of that offense is really going to help him. Being with Jared Goff again, having the same continuity of offense and defense. And I just like Dan Campbell. So I really like Jahmyr Gibbs this year. And then at wide receiver, I know that Stephon Diggs just went to Houston, but I really like Nico Collins this year. He had a great connection with C.J. Stroud last year. Got C.J. Stroud the Rookie of the Year honors. That got him a $75 million contract. He had 80 receptions, 8 touchdowns, 1,297 yards last year. Yeah. So he had a 16 yards per catch average. I just think that was with him being the de facto number one there. He was getting the number one coverage this year with with Stephon Diggs there. Diggs is going to get that number one coverage. They're going to put the number 2 over on Collins. That's going to make him even more dangerous this year because they're going to try and take away Diggs. He's already got the connection with Stroud. Bobby Slowick decided to come back for another year instead of taking a head coaching position. So I just think that Collins could have another monster year this year and get over 1,500 yards and possibly reach for 100 receptions.
Well, it'll be interesting to see the jump that CJ Stroud makes in year 2 because the game starts to slow down a little bit, but now you add Diggs into that equation. How are you going to get both of those guys the ball with the seemingly egos that they have? And not only that, but now you're trying to, who's going to eat today? And just watching that leap is going to be pretty cool for CJ.
Yeah, and they also got Joe Mixon this year as well.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
From the Bengals. So that's going to help. They'll actually have a running game that defenses have to focus on.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I want to real quick transition into your writing career and give me one or two amazing collaborations or stories that you've done over the years that have kind of kept you coming back to this writing medium.
I love doing every story because that's just what I want to do, and I want to keep getting better. So that's why I keep writing every day, even after all my treatments and everything. But I think my favorite story that I was able to collab with is actually one that I had mentioned to you, that I got a chance to speak with Bruce Arians through email 4 or 5 times. And then finally I said to him, if I were to send you some questions through email, would you be willing to answer them so I could do an article? And he said, no, I hate writing, but if you're willing to call me, I would do an interview with you over the phone.
Nice. Yep.
So I said, that'd be great. And I set it up. I said, what time do you want to do it? I said, I'm free whenever you want to do it. He said, we'll do it, Tuesday at 10 o'clock or whatever. I said, or 11 o'clock. I said, all right, I'll be there. And we set it up. I did an interview with him over Zoom. I had a producer there to record it just because I had no clue how to record using Zoom or StreamYard or whatever we were using. And he sent me the file, and I used it as a transcription. And then I did an article for The Athletic just based on my interview with him. And we used, most of the answers, not all of them, because there were a couple in there that, we didn't use for whatever reason. Like my funny question at the end about why are there so many roosters in Tampa Bay, but we got all the pertinent questions in there.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, that would be seemingly like an important one to me. I mean, I don't know, but it'd be fun to kind of know his answer to that.
His answer was that he lives so far away from the city in his mansion or in his house that he doesn't hear him anyway.
Well, there you go. So I know Von Miller has a lot of chickens. He's become like a chicken farmer around Colorado. It's been kind of funny, joking with that. Are any other stories? I know you kind of had some cool interactions with Ian Eagle and some other kind of high ups. Any other stories?
I haven't been able to collaborate on any stories with them, but I've been privileged enough to meet Ian Eagle, and I met Kenny Albert a couple weeks ago. I've reached out a number of times and been able to connect with Stephen Jones from the Dallas Cowboys. Him and I stay in contact, every month or so, as well as, Matthew Barry, Mark Sessler from NFL Network, who he actually just left the company there. So I'm going to see what he's doing next. Chris Wessling was a great friend of mine before he passed away. You know, Ryan Wilson from CBS and a couple of Jason Lockenfor and I connect multiple times a week. I actually just talked to him over the weekend and everything. So
nice.
But yeah, no, I've had the privilege to meet a lot of great people, and they've really taken a liking to my story. And the most inspirational thing, which again I told you, was Jason Lockenfor. After learning about my story and getting to meet me and seeing how passionate I am about this, it actually motivated him to become a kidney donor down in Baltimore. So now he's looking to become a kidney donor down there.
Love that. Well, I've got two more questions for you. And one of them, the first one being, if there's somebody out there who is wanting to become a writer and kind of break into either sports writing or just writing in general, what kind of advice would you give them?
First thing I would do is don't worry about whether you have the degree or not. I've never had the ability to go to college, so I don't have a writing degree, but I do have practice, and that's what I learned from Mike Tagliere, who was a great fantasy guy before he passed away, unfortunately from COVID. He told me, he said, just keep writing. He's like, if you can write, whether you're writing an article for somebody, if you're just getting your words out, try and write 1,000 or 1,500 words a day, just to, because the more you write, the more you're going to get better. So I try and do my best emails and everything. Like, I don't just send an email to somebody. I write it out in Microsoft Word, spell check it and everything like that, because I know I'm not great with the grammar before I spell check it. So I never send an email to somebody when it's important like that. I always write it out in Word and do it like that and then save it. But yeah, just write. No matter what it's about, you may not think it's about something that you're going to be getting into when you do it. Like, you may want to be a fashion writer and you're writing about something else, but just anything you can write is always going to help you get better. So if you can do on average 1,000 to 1,500 words a day in writing about anything, it's always going to help you get better. So just keep doing that and eventually you'll find your voice and how you write. And don't try and copy somebody else. Don't say, I love Matthew Barry, so I'm going to write exactly like he does, because nobody's going to be able to write as good as Matthew Barry at what Matthew Barry writes. But if Matthew Barry tries to write what Mark Sessler writes, then he's not going to be as good as Mark Sessler either, because he would never do that. He would write what he's comfortable. So find what your best style is and try and write to your style.
I love that. Thanks for that information and that encouragement. It's important to get people moving, and especially if you want to be a writer. There's a lot of good writers out there, but especially writers who are blind or have any sort of low vision, or this is a medium that, blind people can do. I mean, you can write about all sorts of things. You can listen to, I remember in the pre-show, you were telling me about a really cool story about baseball and how, there was a guy who had a microphone close to the plate so he could hear kind of what was going on. And there's ways around this industry. And I think it's super cool what you're doing and how you're going about doing it. My last question is actually, because we're game changers and we're looking to change the way the blind and the low vision community adapt to sports, and they're in the sports industries, what would be your charge to somebody who is looking to change the game?
Depending on how you're trying to, change the game, especially I've actually spoken to Ian Eagle about it, and I've noticed in a couple of games that he's done, he's actually taken my advice. So I'll go with, when it comes to broadcasters, don't just assume that everybody that's watching the game can see the game. I remember watching a game, and I think it was 2017. It was Indiana against Michigan. I think Indiana was number 1, Michigan was number 2 in the country. It was basketball. And it was coming down to the end. It was exciting and everything. They never announced the scores. They never announced anything. There was a 3-pointer made to switch the score. They never said, they said, Michigan's winning now. They never said what the score was. And then when they came back from breaks, they would never announce the score. And then even at the end of the game, normally somebody would say, Michigan wins 87-85 or whatever it was. And all they did was say, Michigan pulls it out. All right, now back to the studio. They never said the score. They were never giving the times of what was left. So I mentioned that to Ian Eagle, and now I've noticed that, especially during the tournament games, like March Madness that he does, when he was working with Billy Packer, I would hear him when he came back from from breaks. He'd say, we're back in Chicago, where Indiana leads 18-14 and over Illinois, whatever it was. So he would announce the score, and then he'd make sure that whenever Billy Packer, who likes to talk, whenever he wasn't talking when they went to break, he would make sure he announced the score. And then at the end of the game, he would announce the score, because it's almost like, being on the radio. And that's kind of what he said, is he starts to try and think about it as doing it like it's on the radio. So you have to announce the score once in a while, and you can't just say, because if somebody's listening on the radio, they're not seeing on TV, so they announce the score all the time. And that's kind of what he looks at it now, as it's almost like being on the radio.
Dude, that's so cool. Well, it's been an amazing conversation with you, and I can't wait to have you back on the show and talk more fantasy football. Maybe we'll have you back on halfway through the year as leagues are starting to get into playoff mode and trying to line stuff up for the end of the year. Any final thoughts for our audience as we get ready to head out?
No, just keep trying, doing whatever you're going to do. I have a motto, a homegrown motto that I came up with myself, but everybody you may have to change a little bit, but my motto is diabetes took my sight, but left me with vision. So just figure out what your vision is and do everything you can to move towards it.
I love that. Well, with that being said, man, I'm so thankful again to have you on, and blessings on you. Good luck with the rest of your career, and thank you for writing. Make sure that everybody go check out his fantasy articles. You're under the handle, is it Dom Petrillo, right? The pseudonym that you knew, or the name that you use?
Yep, Dominick Petrillo.
Okay, cool. And then, find him on The Athletic, and anywhere you collect any of your fantasy sports updates. We'll have links in the description. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, is there a way to do that, or send you articles or questions?
You can get a hold of me. The easiest way is on Twitter, and I still call it Twitter, is Envision. So it's ENVISIONFF on Twitter, and that's actually from Mike Wright of the Fantasy Footballers. I asked him what I should name myself, and he said, I gave him like 3 or 4 options, and he said Envision worked better, so that's why he gave me my Twitter handle. So it's EnvisionFF on Twitter, and my DMs are open, so you can always hit me up there, and we can chat through there.
All right, sounds good. And we didn't even get to sports betting, so we're definitely going to have you back for some of that sports betting stuff, because that's awesome.
That'd be great.
That'd be cool. All right. Well, for Jonathan Price, I'm Jonathan Price, and for the After Sight team, thank you guys so much for being a part of this show. And don't forget to go change your game. You never know who's going to be watching, who's going to be listening. So go out, go change your game.